What's up, guys? Ecom Moose, and in today's video, I'm going to show you how I've taken one product and scaled it to over $700,000 in the last 7 days alone. This is not even our overall portfolio. This is just, again, with one of our products. Let me go ahead and refresh the screen just to show you guys that this is real. And boom, as you guys can see, $515,000 in revenue in the last 7 days alone. And then with Amazon, that brings it to another $180,000 or so. So 700K in the last 7 days. If we take that over the next 30 days, that will be a $3 million a month run rate. And just to show you guys another viewpoint over here, if we go into Facebook directly, we've been able to spend over $308,000 again in the last 7 days alone to be able to scale to these types of numbers. All right, guys. So in this video, I want to show you guys what's been working as of recent in this process of scaling one product in our overall portfolio to 3 million a month. I want to show you guys more of a documentation of some of the tests that we've ran over the last 1 to 2 weeks that have gotten us the best results so that hopefully you guys can take this information and apply it directly into your brands. So I'm going to go over the 3 biggest levers that I've seen, again, over the last few weeks of testing of things that are making the biggest impact in our scaling process. And as we go further into Q4, I want to start documenting some more stuff in real time. So this will be a new series on the channel of really just more live documentation of what's actively working for us. And on my channel, by the way, guys, I have tons of content that goes into much deeper strategies pretty much on everything. So whether it's offers, creatives, Facebook strategy, media buying strategy in general, like I have that on the channel. And this will just be more of like live documentation of things that have been happening more recent. And if you guys like this type of content, I would really appreciate it if you guys could subscribe to the channel. It means a lot. I'm doing these videos every single week. It takes time out of my week, but I love doing it. And I see the results that I'm getting you guys completely for free. So I'm not asking for any form of payment as I'm putting this content out there, which I think is more valuable than most courses and very hard to find almost anywhere. So all I'm asking for is just a subscription to the channel. And if you guys could do that, would mean the world. So appreciate it. All right, guys, let's go into the big lever number 1 that we've been seeing as of recently work super well for us, which is offer testing, which I've been talking a lot about on my other channel. And by the way, as I go through each of these 3 ones, I'm going to try to show you guys actual data affiliated with what I'm trying to go over for you guys so that you guys can actually see what this looks like behind the scenes. So number 1 with offer testing, I don't even know how many offers we've ran over the last 1 to 2 months ahead of Q4. But now really going into the peak of Q4, this has been a major priority. We have 3 active right now, and I have another 4 lined up for right after we run this. And when I say offer testing, I'm talking about like everything within the offer. Let's get a little pen over here and just go over what are the main parts of an offer before I start going into the actual data. But again, I talk about this a lot on my channel, but when I'm talking about the offer, there's the product itself, which is one part. Then there's the free gifts around the product, which we take very seriously. This, like changing around free gifts, is a lever that you can play around with endlessly, essentially, around the core product to just make it more valuable. Then you have the discount, which is on the core product usually. So how much you're giving off on this product. So, 50% off, 70% off, those different structures, buy one, get one. Those are just a few examples of like ways that you could look at discount structures, essentially. So whether it's bundle or discount, I should say, so discount / bundle. And something else you could be testing a lot around is your cadence. So this is assuming you're running a subscription-based offer. So, is it 30-day, 60-day, 90-day, which a lot of the times will come with the subscription bundle. So this is something that you also have as a huge lever as the entry point for the offer. Now, why the offer itself is so important, I want to emphasize this even though I speak about this on all my videos, is because it is really the only component that touches essentially every single part of your ecosystem. So it's going to affect your conversion rate. It's going to affect your average order value, depending on if you shift price as a result of increasing value, or especially if you start to add bundles into your core offer. It will affect your subscription average order value. It will affect your subscription opt-in rate. It will affect your subscription retention rate because of all these different components and the journey you're setting your customer up. So essentially, it is the doorway to every single point of your brand. So that's why out of all tests, this is the test that I've been focusing on the most, is just playing around with all these different levers, which essentially there's infinite variables that you could do. So this is where I spend a lot of my time each week, is just thinking about, okay, what are the changes that I can make to this offer to amplify it, to improve it in one of those levers that I just went over. Usually I'll highlight one of those specific things where I'm setting the objective through the offer, but I think this is a part that not nearly enough people actually take as seriously as they should, because most of the time, if you can get a new offer right, this is something that can fundamentally change the scale of your entire business. So when I'm thinking about offer, this is like one of the things that I always prioritize. And again, like we have 3 active ABC tests that are in the pipeline, meaning that we have our core offer that are running against 2 core offers on all variants of that landing page for all the traffic. And then not to mention, sometimes we're also running independent campaigns for different offer structures as well. So this is just as a ABC test that we currently have running that, again, I can't go into the specifics of our offer right now because we have some super saucy things, I should say, that I'm going to reserve for our clients right now of things that we're running. Maybe I'll share this in a few months down the line, but for now, we're doing some crazy stuff around the offer. What I want you guys to get out of this is the structure of how you should look at your offer, which again, it's going to come down to the product itself, which I'm not telling you to change within the offer, but what you could change a lot is the free gifts that surround the product, which will make the offer more valuable. You could look at the discount aspect of your product itself. You could be looking at bundling aspects around the offer as well, if it makes sense. If you're selling supplements, a lot of times adding a bundle component can help increase conversion rate potentially, or definitely 99.99% of the time increase your average order value, which is a big lever. So all these pieces together, these are what make an offer successful or not. So with that being said, let's go into another good offer example. I showed you guys Everyday Dose in the last one, so I'm going to try to make this a different brand this time. So this is a brand called Carpe. They sell deodorant sticks. And this is a great example of all the different levers that you can pull, right? So the way that they're doing it, and I've seen them run different variables where they've partnered with other brands to do a different type of face wipe, for example. So for them, this is what they have. So they have an exfoliating wash, they have face wipes, they have a mystery gift, they have the free shipping. So they have all these different offer components that you will get when you buy this product, right? And they're showcasing all the different stuff that you got over here. They're really just articulating the offer in a really strong way. Plus what they're doing is they're tying the offer incentives to the bundle structure, which again, going into the different levers, this is something that they've tested. It looks like they've put this always by default as out so that you either will go for the 4 or 2 because you're seeing that this is running out of stock. Another way to put scarcity into the offer, which is another layer, which I forgot to even mention. Again, when we go into what makes a good offer, it comes down to what are the gifts that you're doing? Are you giving people the gifts no matter what, or are you tying that directly into bundles? All this goes around the core product, which the core product, if they buy one stick, it's $17, but they're figuring out ways to take a $17 product and essentially when they add it between all this, doing the mental math on it, that's probably close to $48, $50 of what they're probably getting a good portion of the people to buy, plus all these different gifts around it, plus the entry point of a subscription-based offer. They're doing all this into one where they've dialed this in. I'm sure they've ran many tests to get to this place, and they probably will continue to run many more tests around this to continue to optimize it. So again, there's so many different levers that you can play around with the offer. This is something that we have been running a lot, and I'll show you guys something now within the data perspective. So currently we're running a test. We use a tool called Shoplift, which is essentially just the way that we distribute the different tests. But we have a few of these different offer tests that are live right now. So I'm going to have this blurred out so you're not going to be able to see all the details. But the main thing I want you to understand is that one of the tests right now is pacing at a 27% lift, which actually is higher when I go to the actual breakdown of the test within Shopify. So just a quick disclaimer on how I run tests. I never actually rely on the data within Shoplift directly. I always go back into Shopify Analytics to get me the data because that's always going to be your best source of truth because you can always track it back to where the places of the purchase is actually occurring. But this test over here, what I will say is that it is going into one of those variables very heavily. And this one variable will probably allow us to scale a lot more aggressive than just the 30% uplift in CVR that we're getting because it's much more complex than that. So just to show you guys, like this one test alone has been a huge lever and a huge win for us to make things go further. And something that's improved is we've got a conversion rate improvement, but in terms of the overall ecosystem, this is going to be a much more dramatic change that maybe I will share in coming of this. But for now, I'm going to keep this a little bit more low key on this. I apologize for that. But again, it all comes down to this framework. So you guys can play around with this framework for your own brand, figure out which lever you think will have the most uplift for your overall ecosystem, and then really harness that to scale your offers further. Okay, another big win for us has been a winning split test in the last 1 to 2 weeks on our pre-lander as a whole. Now, again, this is a place that has a ton of leverage. So just to put this into perspective, with your pre-lander page, right? So if you send a lot of your traffic to a pre-lander page, and I'm assuming this is for the people that are already running a pre-lander page, just to understand how you can look at this. So PDP will be here, and this is the pre-lander page that goes into here, which is your CTR, and then also will affect your overall conversion rate. So CTR being the click-through rate that you get from this page to this page, and then the overall conversion rate you get from all the people that land on this page initially to end up converting on your product page. So what we've been doing is really keeping an eye out on what are all the angles that have been working from our different creatives. At this point, it's probably 5 different angles that work really well. And then what we've tried to do is aggregate all those angles into the pre-lander page. So essentially an update, but this is on our core pre-lander page. So there's 2 types of tests that we run. One is a split test where most of the traffic is going. So we always try to have a centralized pre-lander where most of the traffic goes. And then we can go into separate pre-lander pages that will go super deep on one specific angle, but the core pre-lander page, we try to aggregate everything into one page. And I'm going to show an example of this in just a second of what that actually looks like. That was a test that we've been running that has been giving us a big uplift right now on the pre-lander side as a whole and overall conversion rate, which is more important than the CTR, because the CTR is one part, but if the CTR improves, let's say it goes from 10% click-through rate to 20% click-through rate, but conversion rate goes from, let's say, 10% to 2%, then it doesn't matter because it's still going to be a net negative. So this is really ultimately the number that actually matters when you're trying to run these different tests. So doing this has created a major uplift on this number for us within our pre-lander traffic, which, is still roughly about 50-50 for us in terms of going directly to a product page versus a pre-lander page. It used to be much more to the pre-lander page, but we've been seeing success with going direct to the product page with this product specifically. So this within itself has created a massive win and probably will be another test that we will run again. Once we've now seen this win, we are going to try to beat it again and beat the control. And then another thing that has worked for us on the winning split test side, and this is not really a split test, so I guess it's 2 different things. I cheated a little bit, but this is a new type of funnel format. Now, again, I'm not going to go into the format, but again, there's a lot of different formats. There's advertorials, listicles, more general homepage styles, for example. So there's a lot of different formats, and that's what I mean by formats of pre-landers. But what we've done is went to a completely different direction of a new format that is now crushing it for us. It's getting us the best overall return on ad spend numbers. And this was in the last 2 weeks. Now, we haven't scaled this as aggressively as our core pre-lander, but now we're starting to scale this. And the way that we look at new formats of pre-landers, by the way, is that we always will try to run this as independent campaigns. So I would never split test. For example, let's say this is a advertorial and this is like a 5 reasons why listicle. I would never split test these 2 against each other. I would always run this as its own Facebook campaign on its own to see if it can work. And now we've been able to crack this, which we're now going to start to go into its own split testing process, only on this funnel individually, essentially taking this process, but now doing it on this new funnel format. And I think this is going to be insane leverage over the course of Q4 as we start to ramp this up. So going back to our big wins right now, it's going to be these 2, which let me go ahead and show you guys an example. Hold on. So I show Rise in a lot of our videos, but I just want to show you guys this as a really good example. So the way that they structure it is that they send all of their traffic for an individual product to this core page. Like they have one centralized page where they've maximized the optimizations for that page. And I'll tell you just as a side note, there's so much leverage in trying to optimize one single page rather than having all these different pre-landers. So I would rather have less pre-landers and way more optimized pre-landers than a bunch of different pre-landers that go into a bunch of angles. The reason goes back to what I was just showing you guys, where that split test that we ran now will affect the overall ecosystem of all of those different ads that are attached to that page. So if I had to do that on all the individual landing pages that we would run, for example, if we wanted to have one for each of the different angles, which at 5 angles, that's 5 different pages that each will need their own phases of optimizations, it takes away from the potency of spending the time to be hyper-focused on that core centralized page, if that makes sense. So you're diluting focus a bit by scattering it rather than trying to find what are the big levers that majority of traffic is still going to and making those big wins over there. So that's usually the way that I'm looking at it. Going back to what these guys do really well is that if you look through this page, essentially what they do with their ads is they must be at like 30 different angles at this point, right? I don't even know how many exactly, but they have all these different angles and they figured out a really good way to aggregate all of that into this pre-lander page, this is more of just a traditional pre-lander page on a website. So like a more branded style pre-lander page, I would say. where it's just very basic elements. But what they do is they just break down all the ingredients within their coffee. It shows how it can help with all those different angles that they talk about. And again, they keep it just very broad in general so that it can really hit and encompass on all the things that they're trying to sell towards. And I think that's why this works so well for them. And it also allows them to focus way more on creatives, right? So they're focused mainly on cracking the angle through the creative. And then they know that they have a more centralized place that can support all of those different angles that they're going in and testing. Just to go back into these first 2 points, again, like these kind of all go into split testing. And just so you understand, like we're always running in parallel tests. So like this test is happening when we send traffic only to the pre-lander page. That's where we're running the offer testing. And then for the pre-lander, they're running another independent test for just the pre-lander traffic. And then this we're running in a completely separate campaign for the new format that we've been cracking and now are starting to see some crazy momentum, which I think is going to be fun to scale this funnel. So that's the first 2 points. Lastly, as you guys saw, we're scaling a lot on Meta right now. So almost 310K in just the last 7 days in spend, which puts us to almost a 1.3 million a month spend rate this month for only one single product, which is pretty solid. So with that, there's a few different strategies that have been working for us as of recent, which I don't hear a lot of people talking about, which still works really well. So I think that the general consensus that the public has on Facebook right now is that you have to do everything in CBO campaigns. It has to be in centralized CBO campaigns. Bullshit. Not to say that it doesn't work, not bullshit in that sense, but bullshit, that's the only way to be running your ads. So we've been running ABO campaigns, and ABO campaigns have actually been taking up way more of our spend. I would say, 60% of the spend has gone probably to ABOs, maybe 70% even at this point. Well, the strategies that have been working for us really well in ABOs is centralizing the DCT strategy. So using DCTs or flexible ads or whatever you want to call them at this point. I still like to call them DCTs. But what we've been doing is running those in ABO campaigns, and that's been working really well just as like a format switch. And what we do essentially is if something starts to work, we can just ramp up the budget directly in the ABOs, as simplistic as it can be. Now, the other thing that's been working really well, surprisingly, is we've restarted to test different interest-based audiences. We've restarted to test different interest-based audiences, and this has been picking up a ton. So I recommend try testing some different interests that will be relevant to your product, because this has been something that's been working really well for us as of recent, surprisingly. And I think this is another thing that people have neglected at this point, where everyone just fully rely on the Facebook algorithm. And while you can do that, and a lot of people do have success doing that, I think that it doesn't mean that you shouldn't be testing these other things. Like, for example, if we just said, okay, general consensus is everyone says don't, test different audiences in Facebook, or don't use ABO campaigns anymore, and we just listen to that, then we wouldn't have found a lot of these breakthroughs in our scaling process. Now, again, every ad account is different, so I'm not saying that this will 100% work for you. I think that ad accounts learn a lot from the structures that you have, but there's a lot of tools in your toolkit on Facebook, right? So there's a lot of different features, and if Facebook still has a feature, the reason why they still have that feature is because it works, and it's still there for a reason. So I think you would be foolish to not test everything that they're giving you the capabilities to test. And again, for us, this process still works really well, of finding interest-based audiences and then also making custom audiences. I have a video on my Facebook channel where I talk about how I look at these custom audiences. But long story short, what we like to do a lot is we look at peak points of scale. We see what were the main things that happened in our audience breakdown. So like whether the gender or the age range or whatever variables were working well and we're getting more spend. And then we compare it if there's ever a time when spend isn't as good, or even if we just want to isolate some of those variables where spend is good, we'll take those different variables and make our own custom audiences as well. Not custom in the sense of like lookalikes, but custom where we will segment different variants of the things that we've seen work well and turn that into its own audience to see if it can give us more levels of spend. So this has been working really well for us and has been a dominant portion of where a lot of that spend has went to, surprisingly. And I'll show you guys the data in just a second of what that looks like. And then one other cool thing that we've been doing is we have a isolated static testing CBO that in that campaign, it's just for static ads. And right now I'm working on a lot of AI automation processes for this campaign specifically that can auto upload stuff. So I'm going to give you guys some breakdowns on this. This is going to be some real sauce as I start to get into this more publicly with the AI stuff. But This in itself has been really cool because we've been able to see some good traction as an independent campaign out of this one right over here. So those are two, not necessarily recent changes, but just things I wanted to mention within the Facebook stuff that have been able to take a lot of the spend, aggregate it, and allow us to scale. So all in all, guys, the three big changes going into these ones over the last few weeks has been offer testing, which I'm going to continue doing until the very peak of Q4. Split tests in general. So on our core pre-lander, running some tests over there. And then outside of that, running new funnels and not being satisfied just with one format, trying to find a new format that could work. We cracked something now that's getting us some more leverage and more spend. And then outside of that, Facebook in general, we're still running a lot of those same strategies that I have in my old video, but just wanted to mention that ABO campaigns have been 70% more or less of where our spend is going. Let's actually pull up the data in that. Give me a second. All right, guys. So I'm going to block out some of these campaigns, but just to show you guys how much ABO has been crushing it for us. This campaign at the top, this is an ABO campaign, and we spent $225K in the last 7 days on just the ABO out of the total $310K that we spent in the last 7 days. So ABO has been absolutely crushing it. Okay, guys. So again, just to wrap up the video, it's running those tests. And then, the way that you look at Facebook, the message I want to take out of that is that don't listen to everything you hear. I think always be testing different strategies, different formats. Ultimately, it's going to be the creatives, the offer, and your funnel that are going to dictate your leverage on Facebook and how much you can actually spend over there. But again, the distribution of how you use that media buying channel should be testing the different toolkits that they have, seeing what really gets you the most efficient results, and then going from there. Okay, guys, appreciate you guys watching the video, and I want to just make a quick mention. So consulting program has been growing. We have an amazing group in there. I believe the average right now is actually now at $800,000 a month, if I'm not mistaken. We have a few people that are at multi-millions a month in there, so the group is really starting to cook up. I'm going to probably open up the next cohort in the next few weeks, so stay tuned on that. I'll let you guys know when that opens up. If you want to do a pre-application, I have a link down below to work one-on-one with me, my team, and also be part of this amazing group that we're putting together and mastermind. So if you guys want to be a part of that, again, check the link down below. You can pre-apply. I'll be looking through those applications when we reopen up in the next 2 weeks and probably reach out to you if you are a good fit. So anyways, appreciate you guys tuning in, and comment what kind of stuff you guys want to see next.